Hey everybody, I'm Dawn, aka Bang Bang Books, aka the criticizer of books, and welcome to the Novel Universe YouTube, not podcast, because you can see my face. The Novel Universe is a podcast, sometimes, where my friend Ashley, hi Ashley, and I talk about the most current and buzzworthy books. But today I am by myself because sometimes Ashley and I read different books and we like to talk about them, and I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in April. So instead of doing individual book reviews, which I have been doing, I'm just going to do a sum up of the month video like everybody else does. Because I ain't got time for that. One of the books I read in April was Neon Gods by Katie Robert. I hope this is not backwards. It's not. Katie Robert. And like I used to do it in my podcast when I was by myself, I'm going to do a 30-second overview because I do not want to spend a whole bunch of time on describing a book that you probably already know what it is about. So, Neon Gods is a Hades and Persephone retelling about Hades and Persephone, and she, she's betrothed to Zeus. Her mom didn't tell her, and she gets mad and she runs away, and she accidentally goes to the underworld where Hades is like, "Hey, girl," and then she's like, "I don't want to go back," and then they bang. There you go, 30 seconds. Going into this book, it had already had two things counted against it. The first one being I don't like romance or erotica. And I don't really like erotica because it tends to be repetitive. It tends to be a lot of different ways of missionary. Maybe I've just been reading the wrong erotica books, I don't know. But I don't think this book is considered erotica. I think it's considered romance. And I don't really like romance either, for the same reasons that everybody doesn't like romance. So that's strike number one. Strike number two is that it is a Hades and Persephone retelling, which I don't like. I've read a couple of them. I did not like them. I did not know this book was one until I got to the very first chapter, and the chapter heading is Persephone. And I was like, oh hell. I didn't even know this was a Greek gods book. The word gods, I didn't know it literally meant like Greek gods. I don't know. I don't read book descriptions when I pick up books. I pretty much go off of recommendations, and Ashley had read this book. She didn't recommend it to me because she knows that I don't like Hades and Persephone. I did not know that she knew that. And I did not know that she knew that, and that was the reason why she didn't recommend this book to me. But I know she liked it, so I read it. So I usually pick books based off of a recommendation from a friend, if a friend liked it, or if it's hyped up, because I suffer from YOLO. Not YOLO, FOMO. YOLO. All right, let's get to it. What I didn't like about this book. Oh, wait. My rating. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm also losing my voice. I'm at work, and yeah. I gave Neon Gods a 3.75. I've done this before, I swear. A 3.75. I couldn't quite give it a 4 because I actually liked Bromance Book Club better, and I'm that person that compares books to each other. And because at first I was going to give it a 4, and I was like, well, I like the first book in Bromance Book Club better than this, so I can't quite give it a 4. So I'm going to give it a 3.75. And the reason is because why didn't I like this book? The reason is because the characters, Hades and Persephone, aren't bad characters at all. They're fine, and that's the problem. They're just okay. Like, neither one of them are particularly interesting or special. I've read these characters before. Yeah, you just have Persephone, who is just this girl who's living in this plastic world. Olympus is very plastic and tabloid heavy. I was picturing the Kardashians for some reason. And she is just like playing for the tabloids and the camera, but she's really this deeper person who wants to go to college. And then you have Hades, who is brooding and the misunderstood bad guy. And I've read those characters before. We all have. And Robert didn't do anything particularly new or special with these characters. But she didn't butcher them either. They were just okay. They were fine. She did make an attempt to you know, make their relationship somewhat substantive, meaning, you know, he's got scars and don't look at my scars and let's do it in the dark and I'm burnt and I'm scarred and but your scars are beautiful. Like, oh God, like okay, and never mind. I'm not gonna. That's kind of spoiler. I'm not gonna say anything. But yeah, it was that type of stuff that I've seen before. I've read before. There's nothing special about that. However, I did like Hades and Persephone as a couple. I thought that they were a good couple because if they weren't, I would not have been invested in their sexy time, which I wouldn't say that I was invested in it, but I read it. Sometimes if I don't like a couple, I will skip over the booty time, which is kind of not the point of erotic fiction. You want to read the booty time. For example, House of Sky and Breath, I think. I was going to say Sky and Forest. Everyone, well, not everyone, but what's her name? Bryce. Bryce and Hunt are supposed to be hot, and you want to read their booty time, but I skipped over it because I didn't like them as a couple, and I didn't care. And that's kind of counter the point of erotic fiction or romance fiction or sexy fiction. So I read all of their sexy time. Was it like super duper hot? Not particularly. I felt that there was a lot of missionary, which, you know, can get a little repetitive at times. But I will say that I think that heterosexual men should read books, romance books written by ladies, because there was a lot more finger action than there was penis. I thought that the villains could have been written better. Zeus and Persephone's mom, I can't remember her name. I don't really know the Greek god system too well, so Demeter? I don't know. That's not her. She wasn't Demeter. No, I don't know. They could have been better villains. I think that I love a good villain, and so I look forward to reading a villain. And when I don't get it, it's kind of a letdown. I think that this book could have benefited from the mom, particularly the mom, a little bit more. The world was interesting. I don't typically go for urban fantasy, but I did like this one, and I like that it's going to be developed more as the series progresses. I think there's going to be a book dedicated to each of the 13, which I think is really cool. I will read book 2 if I have absolutely nothing else to read. So, yeah. But I do recommend it. Neon Gods, I am late to the party. This I know. That's cool. But I recommend it if you haven't read it. Another book I read in April was Moon Witch Spider King by Marlon James. And I DNF'd it at 55%. Confession. I hate disliking books written by Black people. I hate it because I feel bad. And I wanted to love this book. I wanted to so bad. But this book, okay, oh, I forgot. 30-second overview. I don't even remember the main character's name. Sogalon. Sogalon is kind of a coming of age story about Sogalon and her going from this cursed girl to being an amazing person. I don't know. I didn't finish the book. Anyway, that's problem number 1. There's no plot. I can't tell you what the book is about because there's no plot. I guess the major plot point is that we have an emperor who kind of doesn't want to be emperor, but he's a reluctant emperor. And he has a cabinet member or an advisor, that's what they're called. The emperor has an advisor who has some supernatural henchmen who are hunting witches, people who they are deeming to be witches for the usual reasons. And at the point that I got to, I think they were going to claim Sogalon as a witch, which seems really cool and interesting, but that didn't happen until like halfway through the book. and that is el problema, numero dos, is the pacing is too slow. This book is 620 pages, and it doesn't look it. It looks like a typical 400-page book, but the pages are really, really thin, and so it's longer than it appears to be. And it's because Marlon James is too loquacious. It's like, dude, get to the point. Like, he would just wax on and on and on about something that's really not that important, yet he did not wax on about a plot. The writing is incredibly symbolic. So, for example, if there was, because it's fantasy or magical realism or something, so if there was a snake that sounded like a woman, I'm thinking to myself, is it a metaphor for a woman, or is it an actual snake that is also a woman? I think it's the latter, which is cool. I have no problem with that. But it can be difficult to read. It's something you have to get used to. You also have to get used to the dialect, which I had no problem doing. By the time I got to the point where I DNF'd, I was getting used to it, and I was able to read it a little faster, because sometimes when a book has a new dialect, you have to read it really slow because you have to make sure you know what's going on in the story. And that prevents you from reading fast, and it takes longer to get through it. And so at one point I was like, okay, I'm getting the rhythm now. I can read this a little faster. But it didn't help the slow pace of the book. This book is also incredibly depressing. Like, nothing good happens to this poor girl. It is, if you read The Color Purple or saw the movie, like, it gave me those vibes, just like dread, constant. It's like, does anything good ever happen to this girl? Every time a new man is introduced, you're like, oh Lord, what new way is this man gonna violate this girl? I don't think I could take it anymore. Like, it was kind of like that. And I don't know. It was tough. It's a tough book. But this is the type of book that I typically go for. I typically like the writing style, which I did like the writing style. And I would read something else by him if he can tighten it up a little bit. But so if you like epic fantasy, a lot of symbolism, sadness and depressing story about a poor girl who never has anything good happen to her, Moon Witch Spider King, yay! It's awesome. It's also a book 2, which I forgot to mention. It's a book 2, but you don't have to read book 1 to understand what's going on in the story. Gallant by V.E. Schwab. Ashley and I did a podcast of Gallant. I will link the podcast below. We also put our podcast on YouTube, so you can see it there as well. 30-second overview. Gallant is about, what's her name? I forget people's names. I just finished this book 2 days ago. Olivia. Olivia is an orphan, and she is mute. And she lives in an orphanage when one day she gets a letter from her uncle telling her to come live with him. 30 seconds. All right, so Gallant already has something working against it, in that like a lot of people, V.E. Schwab books or Schwab's books are hit or miss. And I'm the same way. But for me, her YA and middle grade books are a miss. I do not like her youth books. I really do like her adult books. Like, I've liked all of them, except the 3rd book in the Darker Shade of Magic series. I'm not going to get into that. I always enjoy her adult books. So when I knew that this one was YA, I was like, oh, I'm not going to like it. I know I'm not going to like it. I ended up giving it a 4 though. So it wasn't the worst YA of hers that I've read. It's the best one. But I already knew that I was going to have issues going in, so I wasn't surprised when I wasn't like singing its praises. Okay, so here is my problem with her youth books. Okay, I personally think that Schwab is a fantastic writer. Like, her writing is very poetic, it's very beautiful, it's very symbolic, which makes for a good discussion book. I also think her strengths are character and world. And plot, I would say, is her third strength. It's not her top two, unfortunately. But with adult books, she can take her time to develop a character and develop a world, because adults have a very long attention span. Some adults do. Some adults like character-driven books. Hi, that's me. Some adults don't. They like plot. That's cool too. But you know, they can still handle a slower paced book. Teens, on the other hand, may not. Teen books tend to be plot driven. And hi, I forgot to say, I'm a teen librarian. So I read a lot of teen books. I buy teen books. And so I kind of have an idea of what teens like to read. And teen books tend to be plot driven because teens have a shorter attention span. They like things to be happening on the page. And so V. Schwab, I just don't think is a huge plot writer. She's not bad or anything. I just think that's her third strength on the list. And I think with her youth books, because her strengths are character and world, her youth books are lacking. There's just something missing. It's just not developed enough. And something's just always missing from her youth books. And that happened in Gallant. It was just something missing. There were a couple of good symbols in this book, and we talked about that in the podcast. However, the characters, Schwab is usually fantastic at character development. And with the exception of Olivia, who could have been better, she's the only good character in this book. She's the only character that you could really talk about or have any sort of discussion about her. And even the villain, which, once again, Schwab is great at writing villains. She has some of the best villains I've ever read. In Vicious, both of them are villains. They're anti-heroes. Marcella in Vicious is also a good anti-hero. She's an anti-hero as well. Darker Shade of Magic, those twins, gruesome. Like, she can write a villain. She has no problems with that. But the villain in this book could have been way better. I was really bummed by that because I kept waiting for this villain to, like, be fabulous, and it just didn't happen. The world in Gallant is interesting. I think it's a solid idea of shadows, and I liked where she was going with it. I thought the ending was a little abrupt, but kids' books tend to be quick at the end. But overall, I thought the world was okay. It could have been a little bit better because I know what she's capable of. But this is a standalone. It's only 300 and something pages. She didn't really have time to develop it as well as she would have a different book. So, but I still think that this book was lacking something because I love her adult fiction and I know what she's capable of. I still think this book was lacking a lot of meat within the story. And I will not be reading any more of V. Schwab's youth books. Her adult books, I'm all over it. I will be the first one in line. But YA in middle grade, that's a no for me, dog. Next is Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. You already know. You already know what I'm about to say. I gave it a 2.5, and once again, she's a black author. I hate it. I feel bad. I feel bad. 30-second overview. Black Cake is they call it a thriller. I wouldn't call it a thriller. It's about Benny and Byron. They are siblings, and their mother has passed away, and she has left a video recording of some important information that she wants to share with them. The whole family is estranged, and the siblings have to come together to listen to this message of all the secrets that her mother has to say. That's it. 2.5. I'm being generous with my 2.5 because I honestly did not like anything about this book. And usually when I don't like anything, I give it a 1. But I'm not going to give it a 1 because I will feel really bad about that. So I'm gonna give it a 2.5. Here's my problem. Stop bouncing. This book relies heavily on characters, and none of the characters were good. Like, all of these characters were people that I've read before. None of them had a new voice. None of them were interesting. None of them were compelling. Like, it was just... So, for example, the siblings, Benny and Byron. Byron is 45. 45. This guy acts like he's 25. Benny is 36. She acts like she's 18. And I don't think that was intentional. I don't think that it's because, well, they were raised by parents. No. I just think they were poorly written by Wilkerson. I don't think it was intentional to make them immature. Like, okay, so the siblings used to be close at one point, and something happened where they are just now estranged, but they never really had a really good, honest conversation. And Benny had problems. That girl had some problems. And they never really got into the meat and bones of this girl's issues. The mom, she had the best story of it all, but I mean, on the surface, she was interesting because she had a lot going on in her life, and by a lot, I mean a lot. However, none of it was developed enough, and I'll get to that in a second. And there were so many other minor characters, but there were so many characters in this book, which leads me to problem number 2, in that this book suffered from what I call "you're doing too much, girl," and that means that the author has way too many topics going on in this book. There are like seven major topics going on in this book. When you do that, you can't take the time to develop 2 or 3 or 4 of them, because you're spending so much time trying to develop all these little things. And on top of that, you have 8 characters. And on top of that, your book is only 350 pages. Sorry. Like, the book is only 350 pages. There's no time to give enough attention to all of these important topics that you have going on. So then what ends up happening is that everything is underdeveloped. And that's what it was. Everything was underdeveloped, including all of the characters. And honestly, this book was boring. I was bored. I was in a book club of this book a couple nights ago, and I saw this post on Instagram where these ladies were like, "Oh, we're going to be talking about Black Cake. Join us." There was a Zoom link. I joined it. There was like 15 other people in this group, and I was the only one who didn't like it. Everyone else was like, "Oh my God, I loved it. 5." And I'm just like, please don't call on me and ask me my opinion, because I'm going to have to be honest, and I didn't want to poo-poo all over this book and have these ladies hate me and never invite me back again. So I just left. I was just like, deuces. But before I get called on, I'm just going to leave. But I don't even know how to recommend this book. Like, I don't even know what to say, because I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it. It was boring. It was boring. I don't know. And the last book I read in April was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. 30-second overview. The Paris Apartment is about Jess, who is from London. She has lost her job, or she ran away from her job. She's running away from London, and she goes to find her brother, who lives in Paris, because she needs a place to stay. She just needs some time to regroup, and she goes to his apartment only to find that he's not there, and he's missing. She can't find him, and so she asks the people who live in the apartment building if they know where he is, and there you go. That's what it's about. It is a mystery thriller. It is adult. I gave The Paris Apartment a 4. I enjoyed it. I wish I could have enjoyed it a little bit more, but I enjoyed it enough. So my favorite thing about this book were the characters, in particular Ben. Ben is the one who's missing, and he was the most developed character in my opinion. And I think that for an author to be able to develop a character who is not technically on the page because he's missing is kudos to you, because that's a good job for you. I think I'm going to do a spoiler edition of this book. I kind of want to talk about Ben and some other things that happen in this book. So yeah, right after this, I will be doing like a quick spoiler edition. I also liked Nick. Nick is the friend who invited Ben to come and live at this Paris apartment. I thought he was a pretty good character. And Sophie was a tenant in the apartment building. She was pretty good. Jess, who's the main character, she's just okay. And some of the other ones were just okay. And the characters that I just mentioned were good, but just a little bit more development. They could have been great. They could have been fabulous, especially Ben. But it was just a little underdeveloped. If they had been developed just a little bit more, I probably would have given this book a little bit higher rating. But I was happy with what I got as far as character development. The mystery itself was pretty good. It was believable. It made sense that Ben went missing and why he went missing and everything. The pacing was done really well. I was never bored. I felt like the author let you know information when you needed to know it. There were some twists and turns I thought were very effective. I didn't see them coming and I was shocked. I tend to not read thrillers and mystery books because I like true crime. I am that person who likes the gruesome true crime, and I like detective shows and everything. And so I tend to kind of been there, done that. I kind of have that attitude, and I can kind of guess what happens. So I just don't bother reading it. But this is the second mystery book that I've read that I actually enjoyed. I actually like The Night Shift by, oh dude, I can't remember his name right now, but you know what I'm talking about. So if you have any adult thriller mystery recommendations, bring them my way. I am open to more suggestions because I don't read a lot of adult fiction. I read a lot of YA. So let me know if you have any recommendations. I like that I learned a new French word, putain, which means whore. They threw that word around a lot and I was all for it. Overall, I just thought it was an enjoyable read. So stay tuned to hear my spoilery thoughts. However, until then, thanks for joining me. I hope I will be able to keep up with these wrap-ups as opposed to every time I finish a book, because I'm lazy. But until then, I will catch you in the next YouTube video. Bye! Alright, spoilers are going to start for the Paris apartment in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the reason why I liked Ben so much is because he was kind of initially written as this wonderful guy who tragically went missing. We saw it happen on the page, and he is this charismatic guy who everyone likes. Women are in love with him. People want to be his friend. And as the story progresses, we learned that Ben is kind of an asshole. He is a manipulator. He's a journalist. And so he's charismatic because he is just trying to befriend people to get info. He didn't have any place to live. He's broke. So he used the fact that Nick kind of had a crush on him to get this apartment in the first place. And then he got the apartment. He found some shenanigans going on. He befriended everybody else in the apartment building, and he no longer needed Nick. So he just basically kicked him to the curb. And he befriended his father and his mother in the bedroom and tried to get the scoop on their business, which was sex trafficking. He also befriended Mimi and Mimi's friend, just like anybody who he could get his hands on. He just schmoozed them to get information. That is not okay. That is not okay. And he was banging the mom, but we don't really know if he really liked her or if he was just using her to get information. And I just thought that to be a fascinating character, and I just wish we got a little bit more from him, because I would have loved to have seen all the dirt and just underhanded stuff he did just to get a story, because you know he was doing some low down stuff, but I liked it. I thought there were some really good red herrings in this story. I did not catch that they were a family. That was a twist that I did not see coming. I liked all of that. And when that was revealed, I was starting to picture Get Out, the movie Get Out, because I'm like, are they luring men and women into this apartment building to like do things to them? Like, what is happening? Like, she really kept the mystery of what they were doing going, because I was like, oh, this is some deep weird shit. I don't know, but I don't know what they're doing with these people or what they did to Ben. I don't know, but I did like that. There were a couple of other, I was getting some, initially I was getting and then there were none vibes, or not and there were none, the Orient Express. I was like, oh, all of them did it. Like, I was getting a lot of that. I was also getting Rear Window because of, it was a courtyard, it was an apartment building. I was like, so I was just like seeing all kinds of stuff going on. I don't know why. But yeah, so the whole sex trafficking thing, I was like, oh, this, and that's a legit problem that is happening. And so the fact that the dad would have taken Ben out because he knew too much is totally plausible. What isn't plausible is the ending and how everyone was involved in this sex trafficking business, yet Jess was just like, I'll turn the other way. Like, I don't know how I felt about that. And that kind of contributed to my rating. But other than that, I was like, well, I don't think that's okay. That's it. That's all I really wanted to talk about as far as spoilery stuff. I had to tell somebody. I only have one other friend who's read it, and I'll probably talk with her about it. But I needed to talk to somebody now. All right. This is my second goodbye. Thank you for joining me, and we'll catch you in the next YouTube video. Bye-bye.